Hello, and welcome to today's Micron Value Partner webinar, Moving Beyond Client Class Storage, the Evolution of the Data Center SSD. This is an introduction to Micron's newest solid-state drive, the M510DC, which was just announced on July 14th. I'm Matt Wokus, Strategic Marketing Manager for Micron Storage, and I'll be your moderator today. Now, before we introduce today's presenter, just want to do a little few housekeeping items. First, please feel free to submit any questions at any time during the presentation using the Q&A tool on your screen. Also, if you have to drop off, don't worry. This webinar is being recorded, and you can watch it on demand using the same URL that you used to log into today. And of course, if you're here with us live, you are automatically entered into a drawing for one of 3 crucial MX200 250 gigabyte solid-state drives. So with that, let me introduce our speaker, Matt Shane. Matt's Micron Enterprise's SSD Product Marketing Manager for the M510DC. Matt, thanks for joining us today. I guess this is the Matt and Matt show.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Listen, I thank you everybody for joining today. I really appreciate everyone's time, and hopefully the next hour you'll find very informative. And with that, I'd like to get started. But as we get started, I just want to thank a few folks for making this webinar possible today. Andrew Moreau, Doug Rollins, Denise Sloan, Tom DeGurko, Chris Smith, and Matt Wokus, and I appreciate their help in contributing to today's presentation. So with that, the topics that we're going to cover today, we're going to take a look at the enterprise SSD market. We're going to drill down on data center market trends. We're going to discuss client versus enterprise SSDs or data center class SSDs in the data center. And I'm going to introduce you to our latest data center product offering, the M510DC. I think you'll find the information very, very helpful. So with that, let's get rolling. So first, I'm going to start you off on slide number 4 here. Really, as you might expect, there's tremendous growth forecasted for enterprise SSD market over the next several years. 2014 was the year of the SSD, as we began seeing the price of SSDs lower significantly, and that in turn helped drive SSD adoption. 2015 is about taking it to the next level, and it's about new and innovative ways of using the technology. SSDs are no longer options on platforms, but rather they're requirements. Let's first start off by looking at the total enterprise SSD market by revenue, and that's going to be the chart that you're going to see on your left. Analysts define enterprise SSD market by dividing it really into 3 categories: storage, server, and data center. Storage is really defined as array architectures similar to those offered by EMC or NetApp, while server is defined as a combination of storage and compute that is more focused on making the cost-performance trade-off. Looking again at the chart on the left, I think really the takeaway is you'll see obviously the dramatic growth across the SSD, the forecasted enterprise SSD revenue for the next several years, and obviously there's the growth in the data center too. So I think that's primary. Obviously there's growth in storage and server, but we're also seeing growth obviously in the data center. I'd like to direct your attention down on the bottom right in the data center SSD market. This view is a view by interface, and I think a couple important takeaways out of this. Obviously, number one, there's going to be significant growth forecasted for PCIe out in the next, certainly for the next foreseeable future. And I think there's also growth, there's definitely growth in SATA as well. I think there have been some, over the course of the last couple of years, there have been some mixed viewpoints and people thinking that all of the data center SSD demand was going to be migrating over to PCIe when actually the SATA demand we're seeing from feedback from analysts and our customers is really that SATA demand is going to hold strong here for the foreseeable future. This next slide drills down another level into the data center market. Historically, you used to have 1 or 2 options for SSDs. This data really shows how the market and our customers have evolved. Without question, the industry is becoming smarter about the deployment of SSDs. Over the next couple of years, we're going to start to see this evolution continue to occur with the increased adoption of PCIe M.2, the value SAS category, the lower endurance SAS, and growth within TLC-based SATA products. The next question you might ask is, what's driving this growth? As the chart on the left highlights, the growth is being driven by the explosion of data from social media, search, cloud services, and e-commerce, to name a few. Our latest data center class SSD, the M510DC, that I'm going to introduce to you later in the presentation, provides a perfect example as to how we're designing our products to specifically address workloads and solve customer problems. Another popular way to look at the data center market is by endurance and specifically how many drive fills a day an SSD can achieve. Endurance is one of the key differentiating factors that drive buying decisions. As you can see, almost 2/3 of the data center market demand drives are with that one drive fill per day and less endurance. One trend that we're seeing in the market over the course of the last couple of years is that our customers are migrating to lower endurance drives. People are really discovering that they're using a drive with more endurance than they actually need, and that the lower endurance drives are generally good enough. As you can see by this chart, the trend for the next few years is growth within the lower endurance segment of the market.
So that's, Matt, that's interesting. So basically what you're saying is, even though there's always been talk about growth in the PCIe market, really the SATA interface in both data center and server storage is still a huge market, and really the changes we're seeing is it's maturing into this less than one fill per day as a majority of it.
Exactly, Matt. So absolutely, I think we've been hearing for a few years now that really enterprise SATA was going to really follow client SATA in that it was going to migrate pretty quickly over from SATA to PCIe. And as I think everybody on this call realizes, that enterprise adoption is it takes longer. And I think that's why we're seeing the continued growth and SATA really sticking around for a longer period of time. And really what's driving the lower endurance requirements is, again, it's all around saving money. I think that, again, people are becoming smarter about their SSD deployments and smarter about their workloads and managing their workloads, and they're seeing that, again, they can get away with a lower endurance product and save some pretty sizable amount of money.
So then if that's the case, in fact, actually, we have a question here about if they're moving those drives for endurance or for lower price, why wouldn't you just use a client class drive?
That's a great question. That leads in perfectly to the.
Good thing I saw the slide.
Lead in perfectly here to our next section, where we talk about data center class drives versus client class, and why the market has decided why they originally used data center class drives, and why we believe the market is going to begin to shift over to a true data center class drive. So first, now let's examine the types of SATA drives that are participating in the data center. Historically, data center storage has been satisfied by the lowest cost storage solution. We've seen the storage tier in the data center migrate from spinning disks to low-cost client or personal storage class SSDs because the price of client SSDs has lowered to an acceptable threshold, and the added performance, ruggedness, and lower power provided a compelling enough reason for the market to make the switch. We've now arrived at another turning point in the evolution of the data center storage. Now client class SSDs are the lower cost alternative and are being replaced by enterprise class drives for very similar reasons. The price has lowered, and they have the added endurance, performance, features, and reliability that the market needs. People are now asking themselves, do I go with the lowest cost solution that may lead to frustration in the long term? Or do I spend a small amount of money more for a more robust enterprise data center class drive that will give me a lower total cost of ownership over the drive's lifetime? Up until this point, price, as we mentioned, price has been the primary driver in the data center buying decisions. The predominant viewpoint in the industry has really been that these added features of performance and endurance that could be achieved from an enterprise data center class SSD is a nice to have, but my budget doesn't allow me to spend the extra money required for a drive of that class. Client class SSDs were considered good enough, and the price was by far the most important driving factor in all buying decisions. The diagram on the screen really breaks down the SSD market based on performance, endurance, and reliability, with consumer and client drives on the left and more traditional enterprise class drives in the segment on the right. Data center is located smack in the middle between the traditional enterprise class and the consumer drives on the left. We've established that price is the primary driver for buying decisions in the storage tier of the data center, and client drives represent a significant portion of the number of drives shipped into this segment of the market. However, we believe that a gap exists in the industry's product offering. Our customers are telling us that they want the best of both worlds. They want a drive to be able to last longer and include some of the more traditional enterprise features for a price that's more competitive with a client class product. They're basically saying, give me the price of the client class product and give me the features of all the features of your traditional enterprise.
Wow. So Matt, I have a question here that, so have you seen then in other competitive offerings, even like a TLC type of triple level cell type of client drives trying to be put in these types of applications?
Yes, great question. We absolutely have. Some of our competitors are doing that. Not all of them. Some of them. We'll get into our competitive breakdown a little bit later in the presentation.
No problem.
I think that a lot of the TLC-based client drives we're seeing in the market are certainly cheap, but there are certainly questions around reliability and definitely endurance. And we're going to address that again here in a little bit later. But on this slide here, basically I'm here to say that the tides are changing, and the result is a more well-balanced product offering that's designed to achieve the perfect balance between performance, reliability, endurance, and price. We've been listening to the market. We've been listening to our customers. Endurance features no longer have to break your budget. And the bottom line is you won't have to make compromises anymore. Now that we've established again that price of the data center class products are becoming more affordable, here's a summary of some of the differentiating factors. There are really two that I want to call to your attention because I think that those are by far the two that really stand out. First is the enterprise firmware features and performance consistency. Really, a data center class SSD is intended to be used 100% of the time. The drive's firmware is designed for background housekeeping activities to occur as the drive is operating, and that these housekeeping activities don't change the observed performance of the drive. Now that's as opposed to a client SSD whose background housekeeping activities do not occur in synergy with the drive. So with a client drive, throughput is temporarily put on hold while the housekeeping activities occur. This momentary pause leads to inconsistencies in performance. Again, you've got to realize what client SSDs were, or personal storage class SSDs were designed to do, and they were designed to be in personal storage applications that aren't intended to be utilized 100% of the time, 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week. So again, the drives just simply weren't designed to be running in a 24/7 demanding data center. The other factor that differentiates a data center drive from a client is endurance. In many ways, and we mentioned that before, in many ways, an enterprise or data center class SSD will utilize a higher grade NAND, greater levels of over-provisioning, or even special firmware features that provide efficiencies that extend the endurance of a drive. So really, again, it's the differentiating factors are really enterprise firmware features, consistency of performance, and endurance are really what separate a data center class storage drive from a client, really sets it apart. Now let's put some of the differences we just talked about into quantitative terms. In order to provide an apples-to-apples comparison of Micron's newest data center drive, the M510DC, we took a look versus a an industry-leading client drive. And we used a SNIA-approved test procedure in comparing performance and metrics of both drives. For the purposes of this performance comparison, we looked at two very common workloads, a read-centric workload of 95% reads and 5% writes. The second workload we compared was a typical online transaction processing, or OLTP workload, of 65% reads and 35% writes. In both workloads, the M510 DC data center drive outperformed the industry-leading client drive by just a staggering amount. In the 95.5 read-centric workload, the M510 DC increased the throughput by 55%, and in the OLTP workload, which is obviously a little bit more write-heavy, the M510 DC increased the throughput by an impressive 270%. Next, let's look at the differences that exist between client and data center drives when you're talking about endurance. This is a big one. When evaluating an enterprise drive versus a client drive's endurance on a data sheet, so we're looking at a data sheet to data sheet comparison, it's very important to make sure you're making an apples to apples comparison. And if you picked up any client product data sheet, whether you're talking about a Micron product or one of our competitors, and you picked up a data sheet of just say the M510 DC, you're not going to be looking at an apples to apples comparison. Generally, TBW is quoted on the data sheet of a client SSD in a more sequential input with the drive not operating in a full state, as compared to an enterprise SSD like the M510 DC, in which the TBW is spec'd based on worst case 100% random input. Based on a normalized comparison of the M510 DC versus a client SSD, the M510 DC offers 900% greater write endurance, meaning that you'd have to replace a client drive 10 times during the time that you'd replace one M510 DC. That just, again, is a pretty staggering figure, considering most people are buying many, many more drives than a few. The news has been littered recently with stories of failed IT and IT reliability. The two of the most recent examples include United Airlines and the New York Stock Exchange. The question that you need to ask yourself is, based on the possible consequences, are you willing to compromise on the reliability of your network? This is an important fundamental question. When comparing reliability, the best standard comparison point to consider is the mean time to failure, or MTTF, or it's also been referred to as MTBF. A typical client class drive has an MTTF of 1.5 million hours, as compared to a typical data center class SSD that has an MTTF of 2 million hours. To put that in clearer terms, that means the data center class SSD is over 67% more reliable than the client class drive. Now that we've talked about the data center market and how data center class SSDs deliver significantly greater long-term overall value than a client class SSD, now it's time to introduce you to what we feel is the best data center class SSD on the market, and really the latest addition to our SSD portfolio, and what we just publicly announced yesterday, the M510 DC. Here's a look at our Micron SSD portfolio. The M510 DC fits squarely into the data center storage market segment. Again, I highlighted earlier from the presentation, the data center storage segment really requires a blend of performance and reliability that you'd expect from the I/O accelerator or mission critical storage segments on the right, as well as the price competitiveness that you'd expect and would be really required of a client class market segment product. The M510 DC, now let's get into some of the nuts and bolts of the product. The M510 DC is obviously offered in the 120, 240, 480, and 960 gigabyte capacities in 2.5-inch form factor. It's a leverage design from the M500 DC. And really that leverage is it's a leverage that is purely in the NAND, so the primary differences between the two products are really in the NAND. The M510 DC utilizes our 16 nanometer MLC flash as opposed to our M500 DC, which utilizes our 20 nanometer MLC flash. It's important to understand that the M510 DC is not a replacement for the M500 DC. Rather, it's a complementary product. The M510 DC is targeted at more read-centric workloads that are extremely price sensitive. The M500 DC is targeted at more random and mixed workloads. Again, the 510 DC is a leverage product from the 500 DC, and is really, because of that, it really has a lot of stability. The M510 DC strikes really the perfect balance, I'm sure you're sensing a theme by now. It strikes the perfect balance between performance, endurance, and reliability at a really competitive price point. And because of the drive's versatility, it really casts a wide net when you're talking about target applications and use cases. Media streaming, some of the ones that we list here: media streaming, photo editing and sharing, cloud sourcing, read caching and indexing, virtual tape, are just some of the potential target applications for this product. As far as benefits, again, we mentioned the similarities between the 500 DC and the 510 DC. Of course, it's obviously a leveraged design. From an endurance perspective, the 510 DC is spec'd between 1 to 2 drive fills per day, while the M500 DC is more in the neighborhood of 3 drive fills per day. The 510 DC, again, it has the balance. It has the exact same expert feature set that I'm going to talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. It offers full power loss protection for not only data at rest, but data in flight. And again, it provides a really nice cost performance balance. Here's a comparison of some of the specs. In this instance, we added the client, our Micron client M600 to this table. For this example, and we talked about some of the differences between the data sheets of a M510 DC versus an M600. For this example here, we actually, the M600 specs that you see have been normalized. So basically, this provides more of an apples-to-apples comparison. They've been normalized to include a similar workload across all 3 products. I did want to call your attention to a few areas where the M510 DC really is differentiated from the M600, and generally a client class product. First, obviously, is in endurance. As you can see here, now this is, instead of speccing it in drive fills per day, we're taking a more of a data sheet look at it, and we're looking at based on total bytes written, TBW. You'll see the M510 DC is really an order of magnitude greater than the M600, and again, these are normalized numbers. You'll notice also from a specs perspective, the random performance of the M510 DC as compared to the M600 is much greater, 5x greater, and of course it's greater in an OLTP workload, and we're using really a standard of 480 gig and a 512 gig as our benchmark. We talked about reliability earlier. Data center class products have a standard 2 million hour MTTF as compared to a client class drive like the M600, which is 1.5 million hours. We had talked about the power loss protection. Again, M510 DC protects both data at rest as well as data in flight. So in the case of a sudden power loss, any write commands or data that's being written from the host to the drive will be protected. We have actually tantalum capacitors on the drive that provide enough hold-up capacitance to complete those writes. From a warranty perspective, I did want to touch on this. Industry standard really for a client drive is 3 years. Enterprise drives are 5 years, so you notice that difference. And then finally, we're going to again talk about a little bit later here, but expert features or the firmware features. What's going on in the firmware that some folks may not know, and that really again provides a lot of the reliability, consistency of performance, and endurance extension features. So when looking at the 510 DC from a competitive perspective, now we're looking at really, it's a comparison, the competitors A, B, and C on the right, whose names will be left nameless today, are similar class products, so that lower endurance market segment that we talked about, that 1 drive fill less, comparing that to the M510 DC. A couple places really where we believe the M510 DC wins and stands out against the competition. Number 1 is endurance. Our endurance is at least 4 to 6x better than our competitors in this particular market segment. The product obviously just launched yesterday, and we've gotten some fantastic reviews from industry reviewers really touting, one of the things that they were touting about the drive was really the extended endurance and the amount of endurance that you're getting for the price. That was very well received. Another area where we stand out is in 4K random writes. The reason I mention that, and again, the 510DC is going to be targeted at more read-centric workloads, but we think the reason we call out 4K random writes is that we think that it's a really good barometer for just determining the robustness and really the strength and the backbone of the drive, and we really stand out very nicely as compared to the competition. And then obviously you'll notice price. The drive is going to be very competitively priced within the industry, and I think based on obviously some of the performance and definitely the endurance that you're going to realize from this product, I think our customers are going to really be very, very happy with the value that they're getting.
So this is back, hey Matt, this goes back to one of the points that was brought up by someone here online by Richard.
Yep.
With that competitive comparison, were any of those drives on the competitor side a TLC-based drive?
Yes, one of those drives is a TLC-based product, and I can tell you it would be, believe it would be B, competitor B. So it's definitely, without question, it's a TLC-based drives they are price competitive, without question. But again, we really feel like we have an edge, certainly in endurance and without question in some of the write performance of the drive. I think those are really big differentiators.
Well, that makes sense. With the TLC technology, the write performance is just inherently slow with the TLC. So that makes sense with comparison that we'd have better endurance and much better write performance too.
Exactly. I think from our competitor or from our customer's perspective, I think they're most interested in drive reliability, getting really good value for the money that they're spending, and also obviously a drive that's going to last for as long as they need it to last. And I think that this product really, when you look at those three care-abouts or focus areas, this product really excels. So here, this is just a quick nuts and bolts view of, as we refer to it, the speeds, feeds, slots, and watts. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these specs and details. I don't want anybody falling asleep on me. But again, really solid, really well balanced. Again, endurance is again, we feel like it's market leading in this market segment.
I guess getting back to that though, is there, if there's one thing that really points out, is it besides the endurance, is there any other particular feature that the sales guys would want to, salespeople would want to highlight?
Absolutely, and definitely our expert feature set, which I'm going to get into in a couple minutes, and also as part of our expert feature set, a new feature that we're launching on the M510DC, and we're actually also rolling it out on the M500DC as well, which is encryption and TCG Enterprise version of the encryption. And this is going to, yep, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But it's really the firmware features, and it's really the fact that obviously we manufacture, design, engineer the flash and the drive, so we're a fully vertically integrated vendor, and really it's our knowledge of the flash that really enables our firmware features to be best in class and enables the efficiency out of the drive that really is really our secret sauce. So, and that's really in the extended firmware features or our expert. One area that I know is when you're talking about the data center, one of the first places, the first conversations that you have are really around quality of service and latency. And the 510DC was really designed and optimized with low max latencies in mind. We really put a lot of work into the firmware to ensure smooth, consistent performance, which is obviously a very big care about for any IT data center manager. Other areas that are important, that are part of the DNA of this drive, obviously data protection. When you're talking about data protection, we had mentioned the backup capacitors that are on the drive that really provide enough hold-up capacitance for not only data at rest, but data in flight. And then our data path protection, which is really part of, it's data safe, and it's part of our expert features, which leads in perfectly to our expert feature set. Just wanted to take a minute to talk to you about our expert features. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this information from us before. We have a great product brief that's on Micron.com that really speaks, that provides kind of that second level of detail on expert. Really, for those people that don't know what expert is, I'll just give you kind of a brief overview here. Expert stands for Extended Performance and Enhanced Reliability Technology. It's really a suite of Micron-designed storage architecture enhancements that greatly improve the performance and endurance of drives. Expert is not, it's in all of our, it's part of the firmware features in all of our enterprise SSDs, so it's not just limited to the M500 or the M510 DC. What Expert does is it really extends drive life and ensures data integrity. It's really our marketing way of describing a lot of the goodness that's going on behind the scenes that folks might not necessarily see. A couple of the items that I want to point out, you're saying probably those that might not know are scratching their heads saying Armor and Rain and Recal. What do those stand for? So I'm going to save you, for those that aren't planning on going out and looking at the product brief on Micron.com, I'll give you just a really quick overview of what a few of these are. First, Armor, which is Adaptive Read Management, Optimized Read. Armor provides really for better data management, really dynamically adjusts read settings for consistently superior performance. Next is Rain, which is Redundant Array of Independent NAND. Rain really just enables the drive to handle and manage losses due to media failures while providing greater level of endurance and protection of user data. Another is Recal. Recal is reduced command access latency. Recal is really the management of the background operations of the drive, is kind of what I was talking about earlier. It really it dynamically tunes the firmware so that those background operations occur in a more granular level. It really results in certainly a faster, more responsive drive and really consistent performance. Plus is the power loss protection, and that really leads in well to what I wanted to talk to you about next, which was the latest expert feature that we've introduced. And for us, TCG Enterprise is a separate SKU, so it's going to be a separate part number aside from our non-encrypted, quote-unquote, standard M510 DC and M500 DC. So because of the encryption, it has to have a separate SKU for import-exporting reasons. But really, TCG Enterprise, or we'll refer to it as TCGE, is the latest enterprise feature that we're launching in our M510 DC, as well as I mentioned on our M500 DC. We really believe that we're the only vendor offering a SATA product, a TCG-capable SATA product on the market today. There are, I believe, several SAS SSDs in the market that offer TCG encryption, but again, we believe right now we're the only SATA provider. TCG is really, it's the Trusted Computing Group's encryption standard for enterprise applications. TCGE protects data at rest against unwanted access. All encryption key generation and key management is performed in the hardware and cannot be accessed through the software or the host operating system. TCGE is ideal really for any business that handles large amounts of proprietary data. So you can think about banking, finance, healthcare, government, really those organizations that need to comply with the federal regulations around HIPAA and Sarbanes-Oxley. It's really just obviously around protecting proprietary data. Using a TCGE SSD is really one way that a business can demonstrate that they're doing their due diligence in protecting people's personal data. And in the world that we're living with all the security risks, this isn't a firewall. I think that's an important thing to denote. This doesn't take the place of a firewall. This is more just around the management and personal information that's on a drive when it gets removed from a server, that it can't be plugged into another server or taken out of a data center with a malicious intent. And it really creates a one-to-one relationship with the host.
Right. So basically, what this does is this marries the SSD to that particular server. So I could not pull that SSD out and plug it in somewhere else and get that information.
Exactly. So somebody couldn't, you're looking at situations of theft out of a data center, or also retirement of a drive, and we've got some other data that you can certainly contact us at Micron or your sales representative around some of the costs associated with destroying a drive, and there's some pretty compelling metrics around destruction of drives and the costs associated with that. And TCG Enterprise really provides some compelling numbers around that. So love to get you some more information on that. So now that we've talked about the value that data center drives bring, and we've introduced you to the M510 DC, which is, what we're proclaiming as the best data center drive out there on the market, you might ask yourself, so what? Now let's look at what these features really mean to you and your bottom line. So basically, we've told you that the M510 DC has significantly better performance, endurance, and reliability. Continue to beat the drum on that. Now let's look again at the comparison of a few key metrics, and this time let's look at the comparison from a total cost of ownership perspective. This first example is based on a read-centric workload that is 95.5, so this will look familiar. When comparing an apples-to-apples performance measurement with the industry-leading client drive, you'll see we've talked about this. It would take 55% more client SSDs in order to match the performance of an M510 DC. So let's put that in a little different terms. For example, for every 100 M510 DCs, it would take 155 client drives to achieve the same read-centric performance. That's a pretty compelling stat. Next, let's look at online transaction processing, or OLTP. Again, the workload is 65% reads, 35% writes. Given an OLTP workload, it would take 270% more client drives to match the performance of one M510 DC. Again, putting that another way, for every 100 M510 DCs, it would take 370 client class drives to achieve similar performance. Again, when you think about it in those terms, it's really compelling.
And this is based. This is pretty much just based because of the IOP performance of M510 DC versus a typical client drive.
Yeah, so a lot of these numbers, so certainly on the 95.5 and the OLTP performance, those numbers are really based on the IOPS, and you're saying, well, how do you do it, essentially? The M510 DC, really, it's the magic is really, for the most part, it's in the firmware. The firmware really enables the drive to operate more efficiently, and really enables it to do multiple tasks at the same time, which really those gained efficiencies really enable the drive to operate not only smoothly and consistently, but also fast. Endurance is the next one. Endurance provides really one of the most compelling data points when you're comparing total cost of ownership of an M510 DC. Again, this is versus an industry-leading client drive. An application would burn through, for every 10 client class SSDs, you'd go through one M510 DC. Now, not only do you incur the actual drive replacement costs during that time period, but you also must account for the resources associated with somebody having to physically go into a data center, pull and replace a drive, and sometimes some of the problems that can go along with that. So you're dealing with the drive costs, and you're also dealing with just the hassle and the resource cost. So again, really, really compelling data.
Well, it's also too. Look at that one. That the M510 DC is not 10 times more expensive than a client drive.
Correct. Yeah. When you're looking at, you're saying, well, you're saying you're offering the drive at a very competitive price point. I mean, to give folks on the call an example, we're really looking at, it's really about a 10 to 20% uplift over the over a typical client drive. So your adder is pretty minimal, and it's lowering every day, certainly. The final look we have here under the TCO value prop is really the metric around reliability. The M510DC, as you mentioned earlier, 67% is going to be really 67% more reliable than your industry-leading client drive. So again, this means that there's a 67% better chance that a client drive would face a reliability issue than an M510DC in an enterprise data center application. And again, a data center application that's running, that's expected to run 24/7. So the M510TC obviously presents a very, very clear value proposition over a client class SSD when considering these metrics. And again, client class SSDs absolutely have the right, there's a time and place for them, and obviously they're designed more for obviously client and personal storage class applications. And we're really, I think that the point that we're trying to articulate is that you know, the price is coming down. Everybody's been clamoring for the features at that price. We're delivering that. I think we're coming to the point where we're delivering that today with this product, and the trend is to continue to do that as obviously the market price is lower. And when you look at it all, it presents a really compelling case, again, looking at the overall value proposition. So in summary, the M510DC gets work done faster, provides extended endurance that really is industry leading, and so we're saying, you know, it's not just, you know, it's 900% better than a client drive. Well, it's 4 to 5 to 6x better than comparable enterprise drives that are competing again in the same market segment. Provides exceptional reliability, smooth, consistent performance at a really competitive price point. And the bottom line, it delivers excellent value. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for their time this afternoon, and I really appreciate it, and would like to open it up to questions.
Great. Hey, thanks, Matt. And actually, we have quite a few questions coming in online here. One of the first ones was actually talking about the TCGE, the encryption. And the question here was, I thought a majority of SSDs being offered nowadays already have hardware-level encryption. So what makes, is that true? And what makes TCGE different?
No, that would only be true from what I know, that would only be true of a SAS-based SSDs. Within SATA, we believe we're the only ones that are offering TCG enterprise level encryption. Again, that's the Trusted Computing Group's encryption standard. So again, that's our understanding.
Right. So it looks like, so I know on they do actually encrypt the data on a client drive, but I think what
true. Okay. I got you. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yeah. So client class drives have encryption. I know obviously our client drives offer encryption. It's actually TCG Opal 2.0 encryption is really the most common. Really the difference, there are quite a few differences. Again, that encryption standard is really designed for personal storage devices, where the TCG enterprise encryption really it creates really a marriage between the host and the drive, and it provides a one-to-one type relationship that again that is different than the TCG Opal. Again, designed differently for different, obviously completely different sets of requirements. And getting on with that, is there anything else that is required for that TCGE setup, whether it's specialized software or any yes.
specific hardware?
Good question, Matt. Yep, I'm glad you asked that. There is. our compatibility work done around the TCG Enterprise products, both the M500DC and the M510DC. We have validated compatibility with LSI, Avago, and Dell PERC controllers, and also an LSI SafeStore software. So a customer would need to have both of those in order for the TCG encryption to work. And we're not any different than any of the other SAS SSDs on the market when it comes to the need for the software, and obviously compatibility. Everybody's different, but yeah, there is obviously that is the software and the hardware requirement. If you want some more information, certainly contact us and we can walk you through more details.
Okay. Yeah, here's a big question here. When and where can we order the M510DC from?
Great question. So the M510DC is going to be available in every standard distribution and direct Micron. It's going to be widely available. It's going to be available through our CPG channel. There's going to be, if you like to go and get one today, I know there's an opportunity. There's a link on our website that will take you to somebody that can help you out. So we'd encourage you. Lots of different avenues. It's not being restricted into any channels. We're in full production with the product today, and we've sampled the drive in production, and the feedback that we've gotten from our customers has been excellent. Again, I can't emphasize enough how it's a very stable product, and it is widely available.
Great. Another question we have here is, I guess I'll get this one. So since this is a read-centric type of SSD workload, does that mean it doesn't have good write performance?
No, that's actually not true. The write performance of the drive is actually excellent, and it's really one of the best. It's really, we believe, it's the best write performing drive within this market segment. And when I'm saying within this market segment, it's really from the beginning when we talked about that one drive fill and less tier or segment. Basically, you break it into three particular segments. The market is really looking at it they really base those segments off of endurance and performance and features. Really, endurance being and the drive fill per day threshold as being your primary driver for that segmentation. And really, within that one drive fill and less, and we're actually pushing the edge of that. This product is really pushing the edge of that into the 2 to 5. We're on the lowest end of the 2 to 5. We feel like we're best in class from endurance and then also write performance.
Will Crucial carry this?
Yes, they will. Crucial will carry this product.
And let's see what else we have here. Do we have any sample programs where you could try out the M510DC?
Yes, absolutely. Samples are available. You just definitely contact a Micron sales representative or that link I told you about on Micron.com, and we'll get you set up with a sample. And we have samples ready to ship today, so should be able to ship it out pretty quickly.
Oh, here's another question. So are there any Micron SSDs that support the SATA 12 gigabyte per second protocol?
Really, I think you're talking about a SAS drive, and I know that we've got definitely some very exciting product offerings that are planned, and but it's 12 gigabit per second is really is SAS for us.
Yeah, and I think it probably also that will end up being the case that going for a higher performance SATA drive, as you've even shown in the market, this is a nice steady market for the next few years. But really, if you're going to look for performance, you might as well go to a PCIe type of interface.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking at PCIe performance. You're really looking at PCIe is the frontier out in out beyond the next few years.
So what form factors is this available in?
It is just available in the 2.5-inch form factor. We're really we offered a 1.8-inch form factor on our M500 DC. We're considering supporting it for future products. We're really kind of gauging the market requirements. We're seeing a lot of the small form factor SATA needs really migrating over to M.2, which you can look for in future products from us. So, but for today, the M510 DC, where majority of enterprise SATA demand really is sitting, or data center SATA demand is really on the 2.5-inch form factor.
Gotcha. So the this is a question here. Does the DC SSD can be used for an all-flash array storage product, or should we use an enterprise class SSD?
It can be. I guess it really depends on the right drive. So now, we continue to build out our portfolio. Obviously, the 510 DC is geared toward, we'll consider more read-centric workloads. If you're looking for, I guess the way to answer that question is really just depends on your workload. And if your workloads are more mixed, so more like 50-50, 60-40 read-write type mixes, the M500 DC is probably a more appropriate product. Again, it's really workload based.
Gotcha. I think, are there any more questions coming in? I think we've pretty much. Oh, here's one for TCGE. What any software vendor certifications did we achieve?
So I think you're probably referring to FIPS, the 140.2. We are FIPS 140.2 compliant. We're not FIPS 140.2 certified. I think, again, we are compliant, and for future products, we are going to pursue the FIPS 140.2 certification. I think that's, if that was where the question was going there, that hopefully answers that question.
Yes. Oh, how about Storage Executive? Will this be supported by Storage Executive?
Yes, it absolutely will. It will be supported by Storage Executive, and it is certainly today. Super.
Okay, I think that looks like to be all of the questions we have right now. Oh, got one more here. This is a good question. Derek asks is there an increased cost on the TCG Enterprise version of the drive versus the non-TCGE?
Yes, that's a great question. There is a small adder on the TCGE based products. Obviously, again, it's a different SKU. It's going to be directionally, it's going to be probably about 5% more than our standard product, which is the non-encrypted product.
Gotcha. And again, I think also we had just to reiterate for that TCGE, how that's different from a client class encryption is a lot of client drives now have hardware encryption on the drive, so it's that plus the software. Whereas with TCGE, it's the hardware encrypted drive plus firmware plus hardware. That combination of the three that marries the drive to the server, which really makes that a unique solution.
Exactly.
Okay. So I thank you very much. We're almost at the top of the hour. Before we go, I do want to do one little bit of just want to thank you and thank everyone for attending. I hope you join us again in the future. And remember, if you want to talk to Matt directly, just use the email or LinkedIn icons on the speaker bio. And also, we have the 3 lucky winners of the Crucial MX200 250 gigabyte solid-state drive and installation kit will be notified in the next 48 hours. So once again, this is Matt Wokus again thanking Matt Shane, and be on the lookout for our next webinar coming up next month. Thank you again.